not fallen asleep, obviously, but I have had moments where we had very long periods of time behind safety car in the rain, and you're obviously not pushing yourself. You're not, let's say, exercising, and you want to pee.
Well, as promised, Freak Nation, Pipo Derani joining us here in the Freak Nation. One of a few drivers sitting on the pole. All right, his team sitting on the pole for the 2024 Daytona 24-hour here in the Freak Nation. And Pipo, we were talking earlier before we went on, was according to all of our stat folks, this is your 10th pole in IMSA. But, brother, the number of times we've had you in the Freak Nation with wins and poles and everything else, it feels like about 20. This is getting old hat for you, going out there and winning these poles in star fashion. Is this something that you're just getting used to?
No, it never gets old. I hope that we can keep doing that for many, many years. But I mean, just so glad to be starting on pole here at Daytona. It's my first pole here at Daytona, despite having started on pole when we did the race at the Roar to decide the grid for the 24 a few years back. But this is actually the first pole position on a normal qualifying here at Daytona for myself. So yeah, really happy with that. It's been a great winter for us as a team, obviously enjoying the championship, but quite quickly getting back on our toes and trying to improve the things that we thought we had to for this year. And so it's great to be starting the year on pole.
Pipo, I'm not trying to diminish anything with this question, but how important is the pole realistically for a 24-hour race? It seems like this race over the last at least 15 years has turned into a 24-hour sprint. So is it good to be up front to begin with because everybody goes so fast throughout, or is it just another statistic?
No, I think in this race here in particular, with so many yellows and so on, um, it's not the most important thing for you to be on pole at all. Obviously, within 30 minutes into the race, we can see a yellow and things can change. But I think it's important for us as a team to know that we have a fast car, and that Cadillac has given us a fast car. So that in itself, it's great because we know that we're gonna go through the race, and then eventually, we're gonna get to the end, hopefully, and we will know that we have a car to fight. If you start at the very back, then you need a bit more luck when time comes in terms of pace to attack for a race win. So I think obviously not important at all for the race itself of how the race goes, but important that we are quick, and the pole position proves that. So yeah, I guess you guys can understand a bit what I meant, right?
No, that's absolutely a valid point. It's okay. First of all, you referenced this in your answer prior that you're coming off of, winning the championship. So you've got a momentum boost again. You said you had a great off season. So all of this is just further checking those boxes and proving that, yeah, we're still the ones to beat. You still got to chase our tail, and you got to do it starting at Daytona. So yeah, I would imagine that it's just good to get this done with and now focus on the race. So give us a little insight as to what you're going to be going through this week. You got the pole taken care of. What do you guys do this week leading up to 24 hours in a race?
Party!
Besides that.
Well, it's jokes aside, we now focus on race, right? There's things that you do to the car to obviously prepare it for qualifying, and then you start completely changing your mindset, even the car itself for the race. You don't race with such low fuel from the very beginning of the race like you do in qualifying. So that alone, it's already a very different car to drive. So qualifying is great because you get to experience the GTP at its peak, at the best it can be. But then come race, you obviously gonna be doing stints full of fuel and running the fuel down, and then by the time you get with low fuel, you have old tires, and so all these things get into the equation now for the race. And we are obviously now, once qualifying is passed, we start thinking about how are we going to optimize our package for this other type of track running, which is the race. You have tire management, you have fuel mileage, then and all those things that will come into play with the strategy if you want to win the race at the end. So, but again, you have to have a balance as well to not go too far off and lose the speed that you showed in qualifying. So it's is that work that we're going to be doing during this week to hopefully start the race with the best package possible.
Pipo Derani is the pole sitter for the Rolex 24. Pipo, when do you start racing the other guys, or do you can't spend the whole 24 hours racing yourself? When do you start figuring out who's my competition and what do I have to do to stay on in front of them?
Well, I think you're going to get a pretty good feel of that through the first 15, 16 hours of the race, but you only really are going to start focusing on or understanding your real competition once you come once Sunday morning comes, because I think obviously the track also changes so much from the beginning of the race to the next day that you might have a good car in the beginning and a car that's not so fast on the second day of the race, or vice versa. And so you start. It's a process, right? You learn that throughout the race, but once you get to the last more or less 8 to 6 hours of the race is when you start realizing who's really quick and who's gonna be your main rivals for the win. But you to be there first, you gotta go through the night, which is a special thing in its own, and it takes a big toll in the team and the mechanics and everyone who stays up from early Saturday morning.
Hmm.
By that time everyone's already quite tired and drivers included. So it's a really difficult race because of it. It's a 24-hour race. It's cold, so we're suffering with that as well normally here. So it's very interesting how the race plays out. But I would say, again, going back to your question, I would say the last 6 hours of the race is when you start really picking up the pace.
Wow, this may show my naivete, but I thought it would be from the gate when they drop the green flag and you dive into turn one. That's a pretty slow turn. That left hand turn down there. You're not looking at everybody else and saying, "Beat this."
Well, obviously at the start you want to get out of turn one with the lead, so you obviously fight a little bit with them, but quite quickly, within a few laps, you're already starting to hit traffic, and then you get into that rhythm of, we got to go through 18 hours of the race before we even start thinking about it. So you have obviously moments during the race where you need to be aggressive for one reason or another and overtake somebody for strategy and pit stops. But um, most likely after, let's say, the first 30 minutes of the race, which normally is quite aggressive between all the drivers because everyone's pumped up to start the race and excited, then you fall into okay, now we got to get to the next day. And then again at the very end, last 6 hours, you start picking up the pace again, and everyone starts fighting just as they did in the first 30 minutes of the race. So it's quite an interesting race to go through. One that, like I said, you have to pay big tolls to survive. The track is very narrow. There's so many cars on track, so it's not an easy one. But yeah, it's one that if you get to the next day already, you are feeling good about your chances, and you hope that you can go for the win at the very end.
Pipo Derani joining us here in the Freak Nation, sitting on the pole for the 2024 24-hour coming up next weekend. Have you guys already come up with a schedule on your stints on when you're going to drive to kick off the 24?
I'm pretty sure the team has. Obviously, with me qualifying the car, I have to start. That's a rule of the championship. Qualifying driver starts the race, but we haven't sat down yet to discuss who's next and how we're gonna rotate between us. That's gonna definitely come.
What does
Um,
Pipo want to do? What stints do you want, bro? I know you want to
I
kick it
want.
off and
He's
finish the
gonna- yeah,
race, right?
Well, I wanna do the beginning. Then
Mhm.
I wanna go to sleep for about 15 hours and come back to the end. How does that sound?
Sounds incredibly honest. I love it.
Especially if it's rainy, we want to put Tom in. He's the third driver, so he can handle all these tough moments.
You take the reign.
Pipo, be honest with me. Have you ever almost fallen asleep in one of these endurance races in the car?
In the car, not fallen asleep, obviously, but I have had moments where we had very long periods of time behind safety car in the rain, and you're obviously not pushing yourself, you're not, let's say, exercising, and you want to pee, you start getting cold, and it's really not very nice when you have those moments. You don't necessarily get tired because obviously still behind the safety car you have a lot of adrenaline, but you do get
Ah.
Just drops like dropping a mic. He just drops the damn phone. All right.
Yeah, well, he fell asleep behind the pace car. What can I tell you?
Oh,
When he
no.
had to pee.
You take car maintenance seriously, and you want to pass on that legacy of care. Use Lucas Heavy Duty Oil Stabilizer to shield your engine from excessive heat, debris, and friction. Trust Lucas Oil. It works.
Whatever you do, General Tire delivers.
The NASCAR Cup Series returns to Worldwide Technology Raceway on June 1st and 2nd, 2024. The time to get your tickets is now. For only $10 down, you can lock in your seats for an incredible weekend of family fun, featuring the Enjoy Illinois 300 and the Confluence Music Festival. It all adds up for one amazing party. Go to WWTRaceway.com for the hottest ticket of the year.